Aaron, where are you? Where is Aaron right now?
Aaron's right here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. All right, let's talk about the latest developments in Leah Remini's lawsuit against Scientology. It is being reported by the press. The headline on this was quite harsh. I got to tell you, I've reviewed the entire ruling by the judge that was just published today. And my interpretation of the ruling is not quite as harsh as the headline of this thing, but maybe that's just the nature of headlines itself. Judge guts Leah Remini's harassment lawsuit against the Church of Scientology. A Scientology spokesperson called the ruling a resounding victory for Scientology and free speech. I'm not quite so sure about that. I will tell you this. There's one major thing Scientology was trying to get the judge to rule, one thing they were trying to accomplish that they failed at. And that is they were trying to get David Miscavige, or the organization he's in charge of, RTC, Religious Technology Center. They were trying to get the judge to rule that RTC could be dismissed from this suit, that they had nothing to do with the harassment, stalking, intimidation, tortious interference, and all this kind of stuff. That's all the Church of Scientology. That's all the Office of Special Affairs. That's not RTC. That's not David Miscavige. My pearls. All little Captain David Miscavige does is sit in his ivory tower and protect the purity of the Scientology technology. And the judge said, not so fast. RTC is still a member of this lawsuit. So I'm going to take my time on this one a little bit, guys. We're going to go through the article itself pretty quickly because it's not a long article. I've gone through the entire 37-page ruling, and I have, let me get my notes up here. I've highlighted a whole bunch of sections that we're going to go through. This is going to be a longer than a 15-minute video. It's not going to be a 1-hour video, but I'm taking my time here. Okay, so first let's look at the article. Okay, Leah Remini's lawsuit against Scientology for defamation and harassment will survive, though only just, after an LA Superior Court judge struck down the majority of the actress's complaint on Tuesday. Scientology spokesperson Corinne Powell called the ruling a resounding victory for Scientology and free speech, adding in an email, Scientology is entitled to its attorney's fees and will be seeking them. Correction. Scientology is entitled to ask for attorney's fees. It is not entitled to receive them. The judge comments on this in his ruling, as is Leah Remini entitled to ask for attorney's fees, and nor is she entitled to receive them. So that's a willful misrepresentation by Corinne Powell. Pretty much everything out of Corinne's mouth is a willful misrepresentation, but I just wanted to get that on the record. Okay, Remini, who, no, we don't have to, It says Leah Remini estimated to have spent about $5 million while she was in Scientology, on Scientology. That's fine. We don't need to rehash commonly known history. In August 2023, Leah Remini filed a suit against Scientology, accusing them of orchestrating a vicious online campaign against her, where she said that for the past 10 years, she's been stalked, surveilled, harassed, threatened, intimidated, and moreover, has been the victim of intentional, malicious, and fraudulent rumors via hundreds of Scientology-controlled and coordinated social media accounts that exist solely to intimidate and spread misinformation. Leah Remini also said Scientology had her followed and surveilled by private investigators. The church filed an anti-SLAPP motion, a legal maneuver used to quickly throw out suits that are meant to discourage free speech or public participation, arguing that Scientology and its members are simply fighting Leah Remini's hate speech with their own speech. As for surveilling Leah Remini, the church said that was part of its pre-litigation stance in anticipation of Leah Remini's lawsuit. Spoiler alert, the judge said he was not buying Scientology's argument that it was having Leah Remini surveilled and followed as part of its pre-litigation strategy, and that their surveillance of her using private investigators, detectives, and all that kind of stuff well preceded any actual litigation or threat of litigation or expectation of litigation from Leah Remini. Denied. So just wanted to get that on the record as well, but we'll be revisiting that in a moment, or in many moments. In his 37-page ruling, Judge Randolph Hammock agreed to strike more than a dozen paragraphs of Leah Remini's complaint as untimely, finding that those claims took place before August of 2022, and it was too late to sue over them because the statute of limitations had expired. The judge also struck down most of the defamation claims, finding that most of them were not false assertions of fact. Clarification. When the judge says, when they say the judge found that they were not false assertions of fact, that does not imply that they were true assertions of fact. What it really means is that they were simply opinion. Okay. None of those are actionable, the judge explained. They're not very nice things to say about someone. They usually demonstrate malice when you call someone names. We know Leah Remini's not a Nazi. You guys call her a Nazi. That's fine. That's your right under the First Amendment. I understand. She attacks you. You attack her. At least one defamation claim was allowed to survive. Remini accused Scientology of enlisting dozens of its members to record videotaped messages in Scientology production studios to make disparaging and false claims against Ms. Remini, including false and defamatory statements that she was abusive to her mom and daughter. Unlike most of the other accusations, the judge wrote that claiming someone abused their mother and daughter is an assertion of fact. And so he allowed that part of the complaint to survive, as opposed to opinion, guys. Okay. The judge also allowed Leah Remini's harassment claim, based on having the private detective follow her around to survive, allowed the harassment claim to survive. He found that the surveillance started in 2013, well before Remini was contemplating a lawsuit. Okay, the plaintiff, Leah Remini, made her demands in late 2016. These are the demands that Scientology characterizes as extortion. After the surveillance had already begun, this court is mindful that some of the allegations involving surveillance occurred after 2016. But if Scientology was willing to surveil Leah Remini before the threat of any litigation occurred, they are hard-pressed to demonstrate any protected pre-litigation surveillance after the fact. The judge's ruling leaves a small fraction of Leah Remini's complaint still standing. Remini's lawyers did not immediately respond to an email or a phone call requesting a comment on the ruling. Okay, so now in my opinion, and I'm just a lay person, but I want to have a conversation about this tomorrow with my lawyer friend, Zach, so we can dig a little bit deeper into some of the aspects involved here. In my opinion, it doesn't matter. Like Leah Remini's complaint had a lot of complaints in it. It really doesn't matter if the judge throws away 25%, 50%, of 70% of the complaints. What is left is still a legitimate basis for a lawsuit. So I understand the idea of like, oh, the judge gutted the lawsuit. He removed, a meaningful portion or even a majority of the complaints. But it's like, okay, it's still a lawsuit. Like, who really cares? And also, as far as the lawyer's fees, this is something that really I should have Zach help weigh in on tomorrow. The way I was like, I don't understand, because someone tried to explain to me that if you file an anti-slap motion, which is what Scientology did in this case, and this ruling, this 37-page ruling, is the judge's ruling on Scientology's anti-slap motion. If you win outright, which basically means the judge throws out your case, you are entitled to all of your attorney's fees. And I go, but they didn't win outright. The lawsuit is still surviving. And someone tried to explain to me that, yeah, but they won a certain percentage. They won a big chunk. So a big chunk got thrown out. And you go, well, okay, how on earth are they supposed to calculate how much of their attorney's fees they're entitled to be compensated for if what they were trying to do, which was get the whole lawsuit thrown out, they did not succeed in doing? You can't half succeed in getting a lawsuit thrown out. And it's like, okay, so if there's 100 complaints and you get 50 of them thrown out in your anti-slap motion, are you entitled to be reimbursed for 50% of your attorney's fees related to the anti-slap motion itself? Is it 50% of the attorney's fees you spent on the entire case up to this point? None of this, it makes complete sense. I'm going to revisit this as the very last item in the judge's ruling has to do with attorney's fees. We're going to revisit it when we get there. Okay, so here is, I guess I'll go all the way up to the top. Here is Judge Hammack's final ruling. And guys, if any of this sounds familiar, it's because 2 months ago, I did a video about a lot of this, because a lot of this was discussed and covered in the hearing that occurred on this matter. It has taken the judge 2 months to issue his final ruling about the hearing. And the reason we did a video about it before is because the judge had already issued a tentative ruling in advance of that hearing that occurred 2 months ago. And this is his final version. It was actually expected that the judge was going to throw out a lot of this. It's just taken this long to get the final ruling. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to look at doesn't begin until page 10. That's the first thing I found interesting enough to discuss in a video. Okay, page 10, beginning since leaving Scientology. All right, take a look at this, guys. Now, this has to do with whether this is a private matter or a public matter, okay? And one of the arguments that Leah Remini's legal team made on why the judge should throw out Scientology's claims that they are just either practicing free speech or responding to Leah Remini's speech. Her team actually cited Marty Rathbun's wife's lawsuit against Scientology. If you're watching my channel, there's a pretty good chance you know who Marty Rathbun is. He was the highest level defector ever from Scientology. It was Marty Rathbun and Mike Rinder who back in 2007 publicly started speaking out together with a bunch of other former high-level Scientology managers. Marty Rathbun married a woman named Monique. They called her Mosey. And I don't know her maiden name. I knew her as Monique Rathbun. I never knew her in person. So I know that she was known as Mosey, but I knew her formally as Monique Rathbun. Monique sued Scientology for all the kind of stuff that Leah Remini is suing them for. The courts looked much more kindly upon Monique's lawsuit because she was never a Scientologist, was not a public individual, was not a celebrity, and was not engaged in public criticism of Scientology, although her husband Marty was. And that's what we are about to get into here. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of that. Okay, since leaving Scientology, and much to Scientology's ire, Leah Remini has actively produced media critical of Scientology. In 2015, Leah Remini released a book titled Troublemaker, Surviving Hollywood and Scientology. She also produced and hosted a TV show, Leah Remini, Scientology in the Aftermath. She now advocates for victims of Scientology and appears on television shows and podcasts to do so. Throughout the lawsuit, she seeks to vindicate others who wish to expose Scientology's abuses, including journalists and advocates. Many feel free to hold Scientology accountable without the fear they will be threatened into silence. In other words, this is not a private dispute. When viewed in context, the first amended complaint plainly demonstrates that the alleged statements defendants Scientology made about Leah Remini online implicate a broader public dispute over Leah Remini's relationship with Scientology. As Scientology's online attack bears more than just a functional relationship to that public interest, the online posts are themselves part of the public's interest in plaintiff and Scientology. Leah Remini's argument, and I'm saying Leah Remini instead of plaintiff just because I want this to be a little more interesting when you're listening to it. Leah Remini's arguments to the contrary fall flat. Leah Remini relies on a case from the Texas Court of Appeals, Sloat versus Rathbun. Okay. The wife of a former prominent Scientologist brought an action against Scientology, alleging a 3-year campaign of ruthlessly aggressive surveillance, insults, and harassment. Scientology moved to dismiss the complaint under a Texas state law analogous to the California anti-SLAPP statute, arguing that the action challenged protected activities. The court rejected that argument. The court held that the harassing conduct complained of lacked any direct relationship to a public interest. Importantly, the court reasoned that Rathbun, Monique, I'm going to say Monique Rathbun, that Monique Rathbun was neither a public figure nor a limited purpose public figure. Rather, Monique Rathbun herself was never a member of Scientology, did not join her husband in speaking out against Scientology, and did not take a public position regarding Scientology. The record showed that Monique Rathbun had attempted earnestly to avoid the public controversy between her husband, Marty Rathbun, and Scientology. Therefore, the court concluded that the Scientology defendants failed to meet their burden of demonstrating by a preponderance of the evidence that the plaintiff's claims arose from the exercise of their rights of free speech or association. Isn't that a little bit interesting? Scientology's defense that they're only exercising their free speech fell short when they were talking about a private individual who had never participated in Scientology and had never participated in publicly criticizing Scientology. I found that to be unbelievably interesting for some reason. All righty. Here, unlike with Monique Rathbun, Leah Remini herself is a former Scientologist who now actively advocates against Scientology, often publicly through various mediums. This can hardly be an attempt to earnestly avoid public controversy. Okay, skipping forward. Therefore, Leah Remini's allegations concerning defendants' online statements about her arise from Scientology's protected activities. Scientology has therefore met their burden for the speech implicated in these portions of the First Amendment complaint. This switches the burden to Leah Remini under the two-prong analysis. And the two-prong analysis refers to two issues of the anti-SLAPP statute. And I'm not going to get into that now for fear of misstating them. I can do that tomorrow with my lawyer friend, Zach. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to jump to was page 12, number 3. And this has to do, with Scientology following and stalking and harassing Leah Remini. Pretty interesting stuff in here. Okay, so this next cause of action is alleged petitioning, alleged pre-litigation surveillance. Okay, finally, the court turns to the third category of speech challenged by Scientology, which they deem pre-litigation and surveillance. Based on their issues with Leah Remini, Scientology contend they were in a pre-litigation stance as early as 2013. Any surveillance that followed, defendants argue, was a pre-litigation investigation in connecting with their right of petition and thus also protected. Leah Remini argues that alleges that she was followed by private investigators hired by Scientology in 2015 while in New York to promote her book. Scientology allegedly hired investigators from International Investigative Group Limited to surveil and follow her while she was in New York filming. Scientology retained a security company to install surveillance technology at Leah Remini's neighbor's home under the guise that Leah Remini herself had sent the company. I've not heard this before, guys. Scientology directed individuals to follow and harass podcast producers until those producers grew so fearful that iHeartMedia made the decision to terminate the relationship with Leah Remini. Since the filing of the lawsuit, defendants have also allegedly surveilled Mike Rinder, who co-hosted the Aftermath show. The balls on these guys. They sent people to install surveillance equipment on Leah Remini's neighbors' homes by claiming Leah herself had asked them to do so. How stupid do you have to be? Was this Bruno Mars? I've heard that Bruno Mars is one of Leah Remini's neighbors. Did this little dude allow himself to be convinced that Leah Remini wanted surveillance equipment on his home? I hope not. I don't have any reason to believe that it was. I'm just saying it's very funny if I think about it being him. Okay, let's see. All right, let's keep reading here. Courts have adopted an expansive view of what constitutes litigation-related services. Statements made in preparation for litigation or in anticipation of bringing an action fall within the protected categories. The parties, however, have not cited case authority applying the first prong of the anti-SLAPP analysis to claims based on surveillance purportedly anticipating litigation. Scientology cites blah, blah, blah. That basically the judge is saying, no gracias. Scientology asserts they were in a pre-litigation stance at the time of the alleged surveillance. The contemplated litigation arises from Leah Remini's allegation that Scientology accused her of filing a false police report and then attempting to extort Scientology. Scientology does not dispute this. In fact, they provide a copy of an article apparently published by Scientology and posted on a website, which includes Scientology's claim that Leah Remini made a fraudulent missing persons report on defendant David Miscavige's wife, Shelley Miscavige. The Scientology article goes on to state that after informing the media of Leah Remini's false report and lack of scruples, Leah Remini's attorney sent Scientology back-to-back extortionate demands for $500,000 and $1 million, respectively. Scientology, however, provides no evidence showing when Leah Remini actually made her litigation demands. The implication from their argument is that these demands occurred in 2013, which prompted Scientology to begin surveillance in anticipation of litigation. But Leah Remini's evidence shows otherwise. In actuality, Leah Remini made her demands in late 2016, after the surveillance had already begun. The court is mindful that some of the allegations involving surveillance occurred after 2016, but if Scientology was willing to surveil Leah Remini before the threat of any litigation occurred, they are hard-pressed to demonstrate any protected pre-litigation surveillance after the fact. Denied. Now, this next thing is interesting here because this next section here, guys, shows that Scientology has been able to obtain correspondence between Mike Rinder and other parties when that correspondence was made with the other parties while they were under or involved in litigation with Scientology, which to me raises a whole lot of eyebrows because there's a lot of people engaged in litigation against Scientology right now who have received many communications from Mike Rinder that would have to be turned over in discovery if requested. And the section that we're about to read shows the problems and the dangers in doing such things. Okay, so it says, this is especially true because Scientology provides no evidence, declaration or otherwise, suggesting that they reasonably contemplated litigation in good faith at any time. Skipping forward. This court does not mean to suggest that a moving defendant must. Oh, no, I don't want to read that. Don't want to read that. Okay. Defendants have submitted a supplemental declaration from Lynn Farney, including an email chain between Mike Rinder and a person identified only as Laura. Now, I know who this Laura is because there's only one Laura that it could be. The email chain was produced in discovery in a separate lawsuit. In one email dated July 11, 2013, Mike Rinder states, quote, Leah Remini is looking for a lawyer to possibly represent her against Scientology, unquote. The judge says, this evidence creates more questions than answers. It's not clear from this bare line in an email how Mike Rinder knew Leah Remini was looking for a lawyer, what the lawsuit against Scientology would be based on, or if Scientology had knowledge of a potential lawsuit. This is plainly insufficient to support Scientology's burden to establish that the challenged conduct arises from protected activity. For these reasons, there is an insufficient connection between the alleged surveillance and a public interest. The court sees no public interest in the surveillance of private citizens, even celebrities, under an unsupported suspicion that litigation may occur at some later time. I thought that was incredibly interesting. So it says here, accordingly, the portions of Leah Remini's First Amendment complaint challenged by Scientology in this category, to the extent that they are based on allegations of surveillance by Scientology or its agents, fail under prong 1. Hence, the analysis of these claims stops here, and the special motion to strike as to these particular allegations is denied. All right. So I thought that was awesome. Let me see. Next, I want to jump to page 16, number 1. Uh-oh. How come I don't see a number 1 on page 16? Uh-oh. What could I have? Oh, there it is. It's all the way at the bottom. Okay. You guys having fun? I told you we're going to take our time here. I'm not going slowly. I'm just trying to cover everything I actually thought was interesting. All right, let's see. Okay, now this has to do with statute of limitations stuff. Yes, statute of limitations. So look, it says here, the parties agree that the statute of limitations for defamation is 1 year. And then it goes to list a whole bunch of different paragraphs and sites and claims and all this stuff. And the judge actually says in here, he basically said, let's be honest. All the information provided here is way too much to reasonably deal with. And so here's his attempt at doing that. He goes, okay, here, the following portions of the First Amendment complaint are untimely on their face. Leah Remini has failed to produce prima facie. I can never remember if I'm saying that correct. Prima facie. Prima facie would be a food, right? No, I'm just kidding. Leah Remini has failed to produce prima facie evidence to show otherwise. 1, at paragraph 95, sending threatening letters to individuals promoting. Okay, so these are complaints Leah Remini made that are past the statute of limitations. Okay. Sending threatening letters to individuals promoting Leah Remini's 2015 memoir. Harassing. Now, by the way, I'm reading these because I think it's interesting to see the complaints themselves. And it's also interesting to see that this is what the judge is throwing out as well. Harassing A&E and collaborators on Leah Remini's Aftermath show from 2016 to 2019. A letter to Conan O'Brien criticizing Leah Remini in 2017. Accusing Leah Remini of inciting Brandon Riesdorf to throw a rock through the Scientology office in 2016. Writing letters to the president of A&E accusing Leah Remini of inciting murder. Sending fake journalists to the set of People Puzzler. In April and May of 2018, a meeting among Scientology celebrities. Let's see. The articles. Are Leah Remini and A&E responsible for the wave of violence against Jehovah's Witnesses' kingdom halls? Another article. Leah Remini is a disgrace to women of valor everywhere. Another article. As the world remembers the Holocaust, bigot Leah Remini inspires praise of Hitler. I mean, guys, that that borders almost on satire, which unfortunately is kind of the position that the judge takes anyway, although that doesn't matter really because this is past the statute of limitations. Okay, another article, how Leah Remini viciously breaks up a family. Another article, how Leah Remini callously treats her own family. And another article, Leah Remini's anti-religious sugar daddy's history of drug dealing and cons. Wow, that's a spicy caliente one right there. A whole bunch of blog posts. Another criminal Remini source returns to jail. A&E and Leah Remini spread hate. Remini aftermath propaganda, inciting religious hate. Leah Remini's anti-religious. Oh, same thing. Okay, fine. What? Leah's new liar for hire is a proud Confederate flag lover. Leah Remini's paid liar. Leah Remini's aftermath exposes lies once again. I mean, it's kind of silly, right? I mean, I wish SEERG members actually got paid like a living wage, because then at least some of that tax exempt money would have gone to like a good cause of like at least supporting people. But the people who are writing all these hateful articles, these guys work for free, guys. These guys don't even get paid. The Scientology's tax exempt money didn't even go towards writing these things because these are religious volunteers who worked for free for Scientology for the next billion with a B years. Okay, let's see. Oh, Siri, I'm not talking to you. All right. Let's see. There's a whole bunch of paragraphs here that I'm going to. I don't want to read all of this. This is a little interesting because this has to do with the statute of limitations on this online content and whether the statute of limitations gets restarted when something gets republished. And the judge has some interesting comments about this. Okay, so he goes, regarding the allegations in paragraphs 90 and 91, Scientology presents evidence that the Scientology videos were actually first posted online in February 2022. In addition, the articles and videos referred to at paragraph 115 of the First Amendment complaint were made available at freedom.org between September 2017 and February 2022. Plaintiff Leah Remini does not dispute Scientology's evidence showing that the statements that content also occurred outside of the statute of limitations period. Therefore, these paragraphs are also barred. In other words, the judge threw them out. But maybe his statements come later. I remember reading his statements about whether the clock restarts on the statute of limitations, but I'm sure we'll get to it. In paragraph 120, Leah Remini accuses Scientology of filing a false police report. And then, wait, yeah. I wonder if this is a typo, but here's what it says. Leah Remini accuses Scientology. Yeah, this is absolutely a typo. Scientology accuses Leah Remini of filing a false police report and then attempting to extort Scientology. This seemingly references a February 2022 article posted on a website created by Scientology, which includes Scientology's claim that Leah Remini made a fraudulent missing persons report on defendant David Miscavige's wife. Scientology goes on to state that after informing the media of Leah Remini's false report and lack of scruples, Leah Remini's attorney sent Scientology back-to-back extortionate demands for $500,000 and $1 million, respectively. Okay, fine. We already heard that in the newspaper article. As demonstrated, Scientology published each of these articles more than a year prior to the date that Leah Remini filed this lawsuit. Under a one-year statute of limitations, they cannot form the basis of her claims. Leah Remini goes on to argue that some acts which fall outside of the statute of limitations period were nonetheless republished on various other mediums, which therefore restarts the statute of limitations. Under the single publication rule, the statute of limitations is reset when a statement is republished. The judge says, Leah Remini has not established facts invoking the single publication rule for non-traditional mediums like websites. One general rule is that a statement is republished when it is repeated or recirculated to a new audience. From the record here, it is difficult, if not impossible, to determine if the alleged republications reached a new audience. This is simply not an issue Leah Remini has adequately developed in her opposition papers. To the extent Leah Remini claims Scientology made new publications about her since the filing of her complaint, her remedy may lie in the filing of a supplemental complaint. I thought that was an awesome couple of paragraphs there, extremely educational, and it leaves the door open for it basically just saying Leah Remini's attorneys just failed to make the proper argument. You can't just say that Scientology republished the slanderous material. You have to prove that they published it somewhere that had it exposed to a new audience. And I think that is something Leah Remini's team could very easily do, which means that material would then be added back into the lawsuit and would therefore, this would not be such a huge victory for Scientology, would it, Corinne Powell? Okay, what is next? Okay, the next thing I wanted to see was page 19 regarding statements of opinion. All right, here we go. B, statements of opinion and true statements. Next, Scientology argues that many of the allegations purportedly giving rise to Leah Remini's defamation causes of action are either unactionable statements of opinion or truths. This court agrees with this particular argument to some degree, as noted below. Because an actionable statement for defamation must contain a provable falsehood, courts distinguish between statement of facts and statements of opinion for purposes of defamation liability. All right. Though mere opinions are generally not actionable, a statement of opinion that implies a false assertion of fact is actionable. Okay. In determining whether a statement declares or implies a provably false assertion of fact, courts apply the totality of the circumstances test. Under the totality of the circumstances, first, the language of the statement is examined. For words to be defamatory, they must be understood in a defamatory sense. Okay, we're not going to read that whole thing. The claims giving rise to the alleged defamation in the First Amendment complaint are numerous, indeed hard to keep track of. The First Amendment complaint incorporates by reference all prior allegations, while also weaving separate claims into single paragraphs or lines. It employs the disfavored shotgun or chain letter style of pleading, wherein each claim for relief incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs, which often masks the true causes of action. Making matters more difficult, the parties routinely refer to the defamatory statements in the abstract or the general sense. The court reminds the parties that under Baral, each separate defamatory claim subject to a special motion to strike must be treated as just that, separately. This necessarily requires that the court and the parties analyze the text of each claim individually in their proper context. Do you guys start to get the sense for why it took the judge 2 months to publish this final ruling? When I read things like this, it makes me very happy that I never became a lawyer. Even though the field of law, the subject of law, the practice of law seems very interesting and very fascinating, when I read stuff like this, well, I guess there's a difference between being a lawyer and being a judge. But when I read stuff like this, I go, good God, who would want to be a judge? Or maybe it's not the judge that does all the work. I don't really know, guys. I just read this and I go, who would want to deal with this stuff every day as a profession? Hell no. All right. Nonetheless, the rest of this section is pretty interesting because he goes through some of the most horrible things that Scientology says about Leah and tends to explain why they're not actionable. Okay. Be that as it may. Hold on, let's say. Okay, yes. Be that as it may, identifiable allegations include that Leah Remini was a bigot, racist, abusive, pro-rape, promoted hate speech, among others. Leah Remini argues that, considered in context, these defamatory accusations are not mere opinions and are false. The court addresses the specific claims that follow. Violence against Jehovah's Witnesses. Scientology published an article titled, "Are Leah Remini and A&E responsible for the wave of violence against the Jehovah's Witnesses Kingdom Halls?" This arose from an episode of the Aftermath show where Leah Remini allegedly attacked Jehovah's Witnesses, provoking a wave of violence against Jehovah's Witnesses Kingdom Halls in Washington in 2018. Leah Remini contends there's no connection between her show and the violence against JWs. She notes that the show aired on November 2018, November 13th, and 4 of the 5 arson attacks against the JW Kingdom Halls happened before that date. But that misses the issue. It is difficult to conclude that the title of the article by itself implies a provably false assertion of fact. The title proposes the statement as a question. It's the "I'm only asking questions" defense. Well, that was my editorialization. While the context within the article might prove helpful, Leah Remini fails to discuss or identify any of the defamatory statements actually contained in the article. Interesting. Considering this, Leah Remini has not met her burden on this claim. Therefore, this portion of paragraph 119 is ordered stricken. Okay. The next accusation against Leah Remini inspires praise of Hitler. Scientology published another article titled, "As the World Remembers the Holocaust, Bigot Leah Remini Inspires Praise of Hitler." Okay. The story arose from a tweet by Leah Remini accusing Scientology of stalking and harassing her. A follower responded to that tweet. Guys, this is how closely Scientology is monitoring Leah Remini's Twitter account. Okay. Okay. A follower responded to that tweet with the following reply. "In the 1940s, there was a certain European politician who had big ideas. He had the right ideas, but went after the wrong groups. Scientology is a plague and it needs to be exterminated." Yeah, that sounds like someone Scientology sent in to make that tweet, to be perfectly honest. Again, as an allegation, okay, the judge says, as an allegation in an article title that Leah Remini might have inspired praise of Hitler, standing alone is not a provably false assertion of fact. Therefore, Leah Remini has not met her burden on this claim. And that part is thrown out. Okay. The next accusation against Leah Remini, she's a rape apologist. All right. After Leah Remini testified for Paul Haggis at his rape trial, Scientology posted an open letter to the game show network claiming that the network employed a rape apologist as their host. Hate Monitor, which is a Scientology-run Twitter account, tweeted a photo of Leah Remini with a tattoo on her forehead reading, "I heart rapists," and wearing clothing supporting rapists. The text of the tweets include the hashtag Remini loves rapists. On April 29, 2023, Forensic Fracker tweeted a photograph of Leah Remini with the text, "I wish I were a man so I could rap too." I don't know what that means. The doctored photographs here, while highly offensive and inappropriate, rape. Oh, I wish I were a man so I could rape too. Oh, um, typo alert. Okay. The doctored photographs here, while highly offensive and inappropriate, can only be deemed parody. A fact finder could not reasonably conclude the images make or imply a false assertion of defamatory fact. Okay. Interesting. I'm going to skip this. We are going to. All right, let's see. Then they accuse Leah Remini of being an abusive employer. Leah Remini contends that Scientology sent fake journalists to the set of People Puzzler asking about claims that Leah Remini is allegedly abusive in the workplace. But the allegation does not appear to actually identify any defamatory statement. That makes it impossible to analyze. Moreover, the motion is limited by the pleadings. Because an unidentified statement cannot be defamatory, the claim fails. Therefore, that part is stricken. Okay, fine. Okay, the next complaint has to do with identifying or associating Leah Remini with KKK and neo-Nazi. All right. Scientology allegedly made a video comparing Leah Remini and the A&E network to the KKK members. Also, in an open letter to the Game Show Network, Scientology expressed concern over Leah Remini hosting on the network and asked, "What's next? A game show hosted by a KKK leader? Neo-Nazi Jeopardy?" Leah Remini argues those statements, when viewed in their specific factual context, are provably false. But again, Leah Remini fails to explain that factual context or provide evidence to meet her prima facie burden that the statements are false. Therefore, Leah Remini has not met her burden, and those paragraphs are thrown out. Okay, the next is accusations of racism. I found these next two paragraphs absolutely fascinating. In videos using former Scientologists, Scientology allegedly made claims that Leah Remini was a racist. The Court of Appeal has explained that the term racist, while exponentially negative, insulting, and a highly charged word, is also a word that lacks precise meaning. So its application to a particular situation or individual is problematic. There is no bright line rule as to whether claims of racism can form the basis of a defamation claim. Instead, like the defamation test more generally, the context in which the statements were made controls. As is now a pattern, Leah Remini only addresses the racist statements in sweeping terms, but she has not actually identified what was said that implicated she was a racist, nor the context of the same. She cannot meet her burden to establish a provably false statement of fact. Accordingly, paragraph 90 is ordered stricken to the extent that it alleges racism. Oh, this next paragraph is also very, very interesting, because I just think that it's so easy to think that if someone says something about you and it's false, you can sue them. It's defamatory. You can sue them. I find these arguments fascinating, why that is just not always the case. Not even as it applies to Leah Remini's lawsuit, but as it applies to lawsuits in general. Okay. Statements. Okay, here we go. Statements by Leah Remini's family. The next thing has to do with statements by Leah Remini's family that she is a liar and stole from them. Online statements that Leah Remini abuses her daughter, etc. Okay, the judge says, Scientology allegedly stated in videos that Leah Remini was abusive to her mother and daughter. In another video, Scientology used and manipulated Leah Remini's estranged and now deceased father, George Remini, and his third wife, Dana, to make false statements about Leah Remini, including that she's a liar, that she only wanted her name in the news, that she would not help pay for cancer treatments, that she turned her back on her sister when she was in the hospital, that she ransacked her dying grandmother's apartment, that she has no morals. Similarly, Scientology-run accounts have accused Leah Remini of abusing her daughter. Leah Remini also alleges that a Scientology Twitter account called Vetted Facts claims that Leah Remini's daughter left her toxic home life because Leah Remini called her daughter the C word all the time. This statement came from Julianne Williams, a former friend of Leah Remini's, in a video posted on his Scientology website, LeahReminiTheFacts.org. In the video, Williams stated, Leah Remini was constantly just like an antagonistic person. You know, she called her daughter a C word all the time. Like, I think at that time, like her 2, 3, 4-year-old, a little bitch. All right. Leah Remini flatly denies that she ever abused her family members, that she turned her back on her father or her sister when they were ill, or that she ransacked her dying mother's apartment. Leah Remini attests that she housed her father and paid for his treatments while he had cancer, paid for her sister's bills when she was in the hospital, and allowed her father to take what he wanted from her grandmother's apartment. She also disputes the allegations of a poor relationship with her daughter. Leah Remini says it is absolutely untrue that her daughter left her toxic home life because Leah Remini called her a C word all the time. Oops. First, now this is where this to me, following, super interesting. First, the court would agree with Leah Remini that these claims are potentially provably false statements of fact. Though through a fact-finding process, one could reasonably determine if Leah Remini had in fact been abusive to her mother and daughter, paid for her father's cancer treatments, ransacked her dying mother's apartment, or turned her back on her family. A separate issue raised by Scientology is whether statements from Leah Remini's family members or former friends published by Scientology on video can give rise to defamation against Scientology, I guess, as opposed to the people making the statements in the videos. Scientology argues that they had no reason to know the statements were false and had no obligation to fact check her family's statements. It's so silly. The United States Supreme Court held in part that the failure to verify information does not demonstrate actual malice for the purpose of demonstration. But the Supreme Court ruling does not totally shield Scientology here. It says, quote, even in a public figure case, a defendant's knowledge of falsity or reckless disregard can be proved by circumstantial evidence. Such factors as a failure to investigate the facts or anger and hostility toward the plaintiff may indicate that the defendant had serious doubts regarding the truth of the publication. The finder of fact must determine whether the publication was indeed made in good faith. Finally, the judge is about to say something in Leah Remini's favor. Here, Leah Remini provides enough evidence that Scientology made the publication with at least a reckless disregard of the facts. Defendants posted the videos at a website called Leah Remini, thefacts.org. But Leah Remini insists that Scientology knew these were not facts. Okay. Leah Remini attests she communicated to Scientology. Because remember, guys, Leah Remini used to be a Scientologist. So they know all about Leah Remini's relationship with her father and everything. So Leah Remini said that Scientology knew that these statements were untrue because she had already told them they were untrue. Leah Remini attests that she communicated to Scientology how difficult her relationship was with her father, and that she continually wanted to reestablish a relationship with him and provide support to him, and that Scientology has documentation in her personal and confidential files that reflect this. When considered in context of the calculated attack against Leah Remini, this is prima facie showing of clear and convincing evidence of reckless disregard of the facts and knowledge of their falsity. Accordingly, Leah Remini has met her burden to establish the potential validity of these claims under the minimal merit standard. Okay. However, at least a portion, the next part gets a little too far into the weeds, so we'll move on. We will move on. Okay. There is the next thing I wanted to go to all the way down to actual malice. There's a statement, there's a section here just on actual malice. Here we go, guys. Are you still having fun? I imagine many of the 2,500 people watching now were not the 2,500 people watching 25 minutes ago. So welcome, everybody. We're going to be wrapping up here relatively soon. Actual malice. This is what I like, because if I recall correctly, they say Leah Remini has met the burden of proving actual malice. Okay, so Scientology also argues that Leah Remini's defamation claims fail because as a public figure, Leah Remini cannot establish actual malice. Scientology contends that even if Leah Remini can prove some of Scientology's factual assertions are false, she'll never be able to surmount her burden, given each one was based on a reliable source, such as a family member or a colleague. As an initial issue, this court must determine if plaintiff is a public figure. It concludes that she is. We're going to fast forward here. Therefore, this court concludes that under the minimal merit standard, and assuming the evidence proffered by Leah Remini is true, The statements giving rise to the defamation claims were made with actual malice. It follows that no claims are stricken on this ground. Praise Xenu, finally something in support of Leah Remini. Okay, we're going to cover this one regarding the subject of merit of Leah Remini's intentional infliction of emotional distress. And I'm just gonna fast forward right to the ruling because he rules in Leah Remini's favor here. So I'm going to scroll down. Considering the evidence, which once again the court must accept as true for the purposes of the anti-SLAPP, Leah Remini has established the requisite minimal merit of her cause of action for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Okay, the next one, merit of harassment. The court now turns to Leah Remini's first cause of action for harassment. The allegations underlying the harassment claim are that Scientology sent harassing correspondence to Leah Remini and to others and created a social media smear campaign against Leah Remini that includes false and malicious accusations made against Leah Remini and at times her family. Okay. And I'm going to fast forward because I do believe they ruled in her favor. Here, considering Leah Remini's evidence, Leah Remini has established a course of conduct that constitutes harassment. Thus, where the alleged defamatory conduct has not already been stricken on other grounds, Leah Remini has established the requisite merit of her claim for civil harassment. Okay, good. The next one on stalking, the judge threw out her complaints about stalking. And I won't read the whole section, but I'll read the beginning and then I'll jump to the end. Leah Remini's stalking cause of action is largely based on non-protected surveillance. However, Leah Remini also alleges stalking of Leah Remini by posting threatening information to various websites and via social media on a continuing basis. Stalking requires that Leah Remini prove 3 elements, and one of those elements, guys, includes a credible threat to her. And so jumping forward, it says, oh, I guess I'm being jumping forward too much. It is not difficult to imagine a credible threat based on the alleged surveillance. Those allegations are not subject to attack in this prong. But again, the allegations subject to the motion to strike are the posts on social media and websites. Leah Remini refers to threats in her declaration, but the content of these threats are not clear. Plaintiff has therefore failed to actually identify any credible threat occurring in these posts. Accordingly, paragraph 236 of the complaint is thrown out to the extent that it alleges stalking based on the posting of threatening information to various websites and via social media on a continuing basis. Okay, so it was only the portion of the stalking that was relating to social media posts that Scientology succeeded in getting the judge to throw out. Okay, the next one here has to do with tortious interference. And this is good. This is another one where the judge ruled in Leah Remini's behalf, based on my recollection here. Leah Remini alleges that Scientology interfered with her contracts with iHeartMedia and Audio Boom by sending disparaging communications to each. These are the only 2 contracts expressly alleged in the cause of action. Yes. I believe iHeartMedia was the host of the first Fair Game podcast, and I think Audio Boom was the host of the second. And it says, okay, therefore, Leah Remini has established the requisite minimal merit of her claim for tortious interference as it pertains to the iHeartMedia contract. And then on Audio Boom, let's see. Yep, even on Audio Boom, therefore, Leah Remini has established the requisite minimal merit of her claim as to Audio Boom as well. Okay, and then there was this one here. We're getting close, guys. Merit of intentional interference with prospective economic advantage claim. Leah Remini alleges that Scientology interfered with her economic relationships with Audio Boom, iHeartMedia, the Game Show Network, and Vice News. Vice News I'm hearing about for the first time, so this is interesting. If I go down here, it says, come on now, you can do it. As to Vice News, Leah Remini presents evidence that producers for Vice News contacted her to make a documentary about the disappearance of David Miscavige's wife, Shelley Miscavige. However, Leah Remini's agents were abruptly informed on March 2nd, 2022, that the project would not be moving forward. Leah Remini believes that Vice ceased its discussions with her due to Scientology's Fair Game campaign. Scientology argues that Leah Remini cannot identify a single communication or act committed by Scientology in connection with the prospective Vice relationship. The court agrees. Leah Remini presents nothing more than her belief that Scientology had something to do with the Vice News talks failing. This is insufficient to meet her burden to produce evidence of intentional acts on the part of defendants to disrupt this relationship. Accordingly, Leah Remini has not established the minimal merits of the interference claim as to Vice News. Okay, so specific. Now, that one doesn't surprise me because, I mean, that one doesn't surprise me. But let's see. Did he already rule about the tortious interference on the other ones then? And I would just fast forwarded too much. Okay, so for the Game Show Network, what does he rule? Uh-oh. Okay, so he says for the Game Show Network, Leah Remini has not established the minimal merits of the interference claim as to the Game Show Network. So those are thrown out. Interesting. Okay, so what about Audio Boom? For Audio Boom, Leah Remini has met the requisite minimal merits of these claims. Okay. And then what about iHeart? Audio Boom and iHeart. Okay, so she met her requisite minimal merit on the claims for Audio Boom and iHeart, but not the Game Show Network and not Vice News. All right, very interesting. IDPR, I guess, represented Leah Remini. Leah Remini is a client of the entertainment publicity firm IDPR. Leah Remini alleges that Scientology operatives began attacking IDPR in an attempt to force it to drop Leah Remini as a client. Although Leah Remini makes these allegations against IDPR in the body of a First Amendment complaint, they are not referenced under the fifth cause of action. It therefore appears that these allegations do not form the basis of her claim for intentional interference, and they need not be stricken. I see. Scientology was asking for that to be stricken, but they were mistaken in their request. Okay, let's see. Was that actually merit of declaratory relief? Oh boy. Okay, so we're getting a little deep into this for me, you guys. So, merit of declaratory relief. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, this is important because if you guys remember, Leah Remini has said that this lawsuit wasn't just to prevent Scientology from being able to fair game her. It was to prevent Scientology from being able to fair game anyone ever. Now, one might wonder how any civil lawsuit between two private parties could ever accomplish such a thing. And I would agree, it doesn't seem to make any sense. But it is something that the judge actually weighs in on here. So let's take a look at it. For her ninth cause of action, Leah Remini seeks a judicial declaration that the practice of suppressive persons' operations are unlawful and should be ceased immediately. An anti-SLAPP motion may lie against a complaint for declaratory relief. Moreover, the mere existence of a controversy is insufficient to overcome an anti-SLAPP motion against the claim for declaratory relief. Okay, we're going to skip this paragraph. Plaintiff argues a declaratory judgment is proper here, because regardless of the title of the policy, Leah Remini has presented sufficient evidence to show that Scientology maintains and implements a policy of retribution to terrorize former members of Scientology, including Leah Remini. Scientology, on the other hand, argues that Leah Remini unlawfully seeks an unconstitutional prior restraint on defendants' free speech and petitioning activities beyond any precedent for this court to modify, if not erase, certain Scientology doctrine and alleged scripture. A court may refuse to issue a judicial declaration in any case where its declaration or determination is not necessary or proper at the time under all of the circumstances. The judge says, here, it is difficult to imagine this court could issue a declaration within the confines of the Constitution. At the same time, the declaration Leah Remini seeks is effectively already encompassed by the relief she seeks in her other 8 causes of action. A judicial declaration is unnecessary when an adjudication upon the issues raised in the other causes of action would fully and adequately determine all matters actually in controversy between the parties. Anything further is beyond the scope of this controversy. Then perhaps the better question is, why is a declaration necessary? It is unclear what practical effect a declaration might have in this case. It goes without saying that courts need not issue declarations simply telling parties to obey the law. Leah Remini has not produced prima facie evidence supporting the relief that she seeks. Accordingly, her claim for declaratory relief is stricken. Okay, so that one's thrown out. Now, I like this part about RTC. Now we're getting to the last part here about RTC wanted to be removed from this lawsuit. And essentially, what it says is that Mike Rinder and Claire Headley submitted declarations based on their experience working with and for RTC, that RTC would have had to have been involved in authorizing these attacks on Leah Remini. Scientology, of course, submitted counterclaims. And actually, I want to, I remember those not counterclaims, but like counter affidavits, right? Okay. In RTC's response, it objects to much of the supplemental evidence and attacks the credibility of Rinder and Headley. It also presents a supplemental declaration from Warren McShane, who has served as director and president of RTC since 1983. As the president of RTC, McShane continues, he can unequivocally state that RTC neither made nor published any of the statements alleged in the First Amendment complaint, on which Leah Remini is suing. He also unequivocally states that RTC did not engage in any of the acts alleged. So this last paragraph is the interesting point. As noted throughout this ruling, when ruling on a special motion to strike, the court does not weigh the credibility or comparative, probative strength of competing evidence. And the court must accept as true the evidence favorable to the plaintiff. Isn't that interesting, guys? Doing so here, Leah Remini has met her burden to establish that defendant RTC is a proper defendant. Therefore, where not otherwise ordered stricken in this ruling, Leah Remini has met her burden under prong 2 to maintain her claims against defendant RTC. I thought that was really interesting, that when dealing with an anti-SLAPP motion, all evidence basically has to be interpreted almost in favor of the plaintiff themselves, which does make it a little remarkable that so much of Leah's complaint was thrown out. But I think in the judge's case, it was thrown out just on crystal clear black and white. What is it called? What is it called when you have an earlier case? Precedent, legal precedent. Crystal clear, black and white, legal precedent and Supreme Court rulings. Okay, so, oh, yes. And the very, very last part has to do with attorney's fees. Here it is, you guys. Attorney's fees. A prevailing defendant on a special motion to strike shall be entitled to recover its attorney's fees and costs. Of course, in some instances, the reverse is allowed. A plaintiff who prevails on a special motion to strike shall be awarded fees if the court finds that the special motion was frivolous or is solely intended to cause unnecessary delay. Given the mixed nature of this ruling, any party may file a noticed motion for attorney's fees and costs if they elect to do so. This court makes no finding at this time whether there actually is such a right to attorney's fees and costs by any party. The right to such attorney's fees and costs and the amount thereof, if applicable, will be determined at any hearing on a noticed motion. Be that as it may, any party who files such motion should keep in mind the standards for such a request. It is so ordered. So there you go. I just feel that Scientology acting like this was some huge giant victory is just like blowing a bunch of smoke up their own ass, because it's still going to court, dumbasses. like that's what I said. It doesn't matter if the judge threw out 25%, 50%, or 75%. The rest of it's still going to court. How's that a victory? I just don't get it. I'm going to speculate that the possibility of a motion like this having been upheld and then being personally on the hook for all of the legal costs of Scientology, which they will intentionally run up just for such cases like this, is probably at least partially why Mike Rinder refused to join in on this lawsuit with Leah Remini, and why he told her she probably wouldn't want to bring this lawsuit. Because I think Mike's probably seen Scientology time and time again see tactics like this succeed, and then see the other party saddled with lawyers' fees costs. I mean, that happened to Mark and Claire Headley in their lawsuit. That was thrown out. I think they ended up having to pay like $40,000 of Scientology's legal fees. So there you go, guys. That was the ruling. We've dug into it pretty deeply here. I'm hoping there are parts of this that my lawyer friend Zach finds very, very specifically interesting, even beyond what we've covered in this video. And if that is the case, we will definitely be discussing it tomorrow. All right. I am looking here through all the comments that SPTV Tattoo Warrior has starred. And let's see. SPIT Clearwater says, remember, Scientology was not successful in the removal of RTC from the suit. Little baby Davy will still be deposed at this point. Bingo. Yes, he will be. Okay. Good Girl on Roller Skates says, isn't that video of that lady showing up to someone else's house a video by Monique Rathman? Yes. Yes, indeed. That absolutely is. And below drill, Dylan Gill says, Amelia Rose, thank you, and glad to be here with the chat box peeps. Barb, that wasn't a comment directed at me, just so you know. Okay. Sir Crepitus, I'm not surprised that they installed that equipment. Remember Paulette Cooper and the infiltration of the IRS? Exactly. Oh, believe me, I remember. I mean, it's just, guys, I mean, every time you see them do something like wild like that, you just you just have to marvel at it every single time. But yes, I mean, them successfully doing that is absolutely par for the course given the stuff they've done in the past. Blake Reed says, is this just like Hot Fuzz where the entire friggin' town is in on it? The cops, the judge, everybody. Like, what in the hell is it that they like having to put up with this BS every day? Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, after having gone through the entire thing, like, doesn't it seem like the judge still left in stuff that really mattered? You know what I mean? Like, I think the media, I think the media is kind of overblowing how much damage has been done to Leah Remini's lawsuit in this case. That's my personal opinion. But that would be, even that alone, that issue alone would be interesting enough to get my lawyer friend Zach's input on it. Joe Lee says, poor Leah, I cannot imagine what is going through her head right now. I believe what's going through her head is, Davey, you still getting deposed, you little bitch. That is my guess. Okay. Dazed by Dogs says, it looks like what is remaining has strong merit and will be provable. It sounds worse to say stuff was thrown out rather than just to say that the suit is still on. Exactly. I totally agree. Laura Font says, thank you for centering your desk and camera on the wall. It helps with the distortion. It's my pleasure, Laura. Thank you. B says, I wouldn't trust a superior court judge, so hopefully she appeals. It is very likely to find corruption at the lower levels in any courthouse in America. Oh, that's another lawyer for Zach. Is there anything appealable about this anti-SLAPP decision? Because I don't think that there is, but what do I know, guys? I grew up in a cult. Sovereign Brehan, the judge is doing Leah Remini's legal team's work, kind of, a little bit. Declared Dave loves suppressive Sherry. Good to see you, Declared Dave. Did I see you live streaming earlier today? I think I did. Leah's team can ask the judge to reconsider his decisions by providing clarifications. That's right. It does look like some of that will be going on. SJ says, doesn't Leah's lawsuit include RICO charges into Scientology, or is that a separate case? I think that is the separate case brought by Jane Doe's. There's another case brought by Jane Doe against Scientology, and another case against multiple Jane Does against Scientology and Danny Masterson. And I believe two of the Jane Does, multiple of the Jane Does, but not all of them in that lawsuit have added RICO charges in that lawsuit. It's very complicated, guys. Stephanie Slaughters says, what were the original charges the judge threw out? Because this easily seems like harassment and defamation. Stephanie, I think we covered all that in the video. Otherwise, I don't have any additional answers to that. Declared Dave loves suppressive Sherry. I wish Leah's lawyers would have given evidence that these free speech actions by Scientology, by the cult, actually harmed her or someone. I think the judge would be more swayed. I think that might be part of the problem. How do you prove actual damages? Meaning, I know sometimes you can't, but in the cases that we're talking about right here, how do you prove that she was actually harmed? How do you do that? But we'll see. Okay, Butterfly says, where is the proof that Leah did this to her family? The judge says Leah doesn't have enough proof. Where is the judge's proof? Thank you for the question, Butterfly. Big Yellow Bird says, go over the Mike Rinder part, please. What is her tie to him? How is he helping her? Oh, it had to do in the matter of RTC trying to say we're not involved in any of this. And Mike and Claire are just providing affidavits from their own experience for RTC is intimately involved in the operation of Scientology and the operation of the Office of Special Affairs. That's the answer. Okay, Cat ACDC fan. Wow, it didn't sound like the court was going to favor Leah at all. How crazy. And yet they did, though, didn't they? Stephanie Slaughters says she still has avenues to go back and refile. Absolutely. Rosalind says at Colette. So SPTV Tattoo War, do me a favor. When comments are responding to other people in the comment, let's not bring them up since they're not directed at me. Thank you very much. Stephanie Slaughter says, go back. She did prove minimum merit for another claim. Okay, good. Well, I already went back, so thank you for that. Sandy Bowers says, would love to hear from Zach on all of this. Yes, me too. Hopefully we'll get that together tomorrow as long as we are both around. And Hank Zorb, what are the chances of having a televised trial? I don't know how to find that out. I'm going to put that on my list of things to ask Zach about. In civil cases like this in Los Angeles, do we already know what the rules are regarding a televised trial? Guys, you got to remember, Scientology has never won a jury trial in its existence. Scientology doesn't let itself get to trial. When all possible options to avoid trial are exhausted, Scientology settles. Now, the question is, will Leah settle? Probably not. But you have to understand, it's in Scientology's best interest to offer enough money where the person feels like they don't have a choice but to settle. So the only reason, legally speaking, I'm not speaking for anybody, but legally speaking, I can think of two ways to think about this. I forget it. My opinion on this doesn't matter. So we will see what happens. All right, guys, that is it for now. It's late. It's 11:30. We spent a lot of time on this. Thank you guys for hanging out with me this evening. Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very end. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.